Sup, guys? I'm going to have no plays today. This baseball card is just not something I really see much of an angle anywhere. I'm just going to pass on it. Yesterday, I wound up going 1-0. Unfortunately, when I put the video out yesterday, the starting pitching matchups hadn't all been announced, and I should have mentioned this on the video. I don't know why I didn't, because I mentioned most of the other leans that I had, and the under in the San Diego game didn't quite get there. Although it wound up being close, even though it was very high scoring early, which is not what I expected. I was right about the New York Mets, but I wound up making one play on one of the games that I only mentioned really briefly. I mentioned that Toronto was in a return home spot. So obviously that's the type of spot that I like to look to fade that team, because it's a distracted spot when a team returns home from a road trip. They have to get back to home life, etc. And I was looking at that and saying, okay, Toronto looks like a team you might want to fade. It looked like a good spot for Cincinnati as well, because Cincinnati was coming off being swept at home by the Royals, and not only being swept, but being swept in a very embarrassing fashion. I think they got outscored in that series, something like, what was it, like 20-something to 3? Let me see. It was 28-3. It looks like they only scored one run in each of those games. So it looked like a good focus spot for Cincinnati, too, having lost horrendously at home 3 games in a row, getting blasted by Kansas City, and then getting to finally get out of there, go on the road, forget about how they were playing at home, start a road trip. That tends to be a focus spot for that team. So you had a Cincinnati team that was likely going to be focused against a Toronto team that was likely not going to be as focused. So I liked all that. And then when the starting pitcher was announced for Cincinnati, that's when I came in and said, I'm going to play this game, because Cincinnati announced that they were bringing up Aguilar, who is a pitcher in their organization, one of their better prospects, and he was going to be making his major league debut, Julian Aguilar. They brought him up, and I looked at his minor league stats, and I said, okay, his stats aren't that bad, even though once he got up to AAA, he'd been in AAA, I think, twice, actually. He'd been back and forth between single A, double A, AAA, a couple of different times. His ERA in AAA, I think, was like in the 4s, which isn't really that great, but he had a pretty good strikeout rate, and his walk rate wasn't really that bad. So I was looking at it. He has like a 5-pitch arsenal. I think he throws into like the mid to upper 90s on the fastball and has decent off-speed stuff. So I was like, I'm going to do it. You have this young guy who's considered to be a pretty good prospect, and Toronto's going to be facing him cold and having no idea what to expect. So that gives an edge to the pitcher. Like I always say, when a lineup has not seen that opposing pitcher before, that tends to be an edge. So I liked that too. And then Kevin Gausman was pitching for Toronto, and he is really no mystery to the major leagues at this point, because he's been around for so long. And the Reds had like decent numbers up against him. I think he allowed like a 270 batting average to them or something, and 770, somewhere in that range, OPS. So I was like, I'm going to do it. You have the starting pitching edge, in my opinion, with Cincinnati. You had the situational edge with Cincinnati in that one. And I don't remember. I think the bullpen situation was kind of just even for both teams. There was about even usage in the previous game. So I did play Cincinnati yesterday, and I split the bet on the run line and money line. I took 1.5 plus 1.5 run line at like minus 145 for half the bet, and then played the other half on like a plus 150 money line, I think. So either one, it wound up working. Cincinnati won outright. So unfortunately, I did not get that information out, although I did put a comment on yesterday's video saying that I did like that side. So at least there was that. And then moving on to today, there really is not much on this card that I even want to comment on, man. Even I look and think, oh, I might have a lean in this one. Like, my strongest reaction was to Minnesota, San Diego again, and liking the Minnesota side after San Diego won yesterday. Although I think the bullpen situation is maybe not in favor of Minnesota. Well, actually, I'm wrong about that, I guess, because Minnesota, after Matthews came out after the second inning, he didn't have the best performance yesterday. Only gave up 2 earned runs, but had a 1-to-2 strikeout walk ratio, which isn't that good. Went 5 innings, was kind of inefficient with his pitches. They only used 2 relievers after that. And San Diego wound up using 3 and using some of their best relievers, including their closer, Suarez. So San Diego's bullpen is actually at a bit of a disadvantage coming into this game. And I like the starting pitching matchup in this one, but I just don't think it's strong enough to actually do this because of the specific matchup numbers. But Bailey Ober is pitching for Minnesota, and he's been pitching out of his mind recently, basically after a rough start to the season. Everybody was saying that Ober isn't actually good, and I just kept saying, look at his other stats, dude. Like, his strikeout walk ratio is just continuously insane. His whip is continuously low. Like, what are you even thinking here? He's going to be fine. And since June 16th, he's allowed 3 earned runs once and fewer than that in all of his other starts. There's been nothing else to say besides the fact that he's just been excellent since then. With his ERA dropping, I think it was in the 5s earlier in the season, to 3.49, a whip of 1 now, which is quite low, a 140 to 34 strikeout walk ratio, and 134 innings pitched, only 100 hits allowed. Good strikeout walk ratio, good strikeout rate, not a bad walk rate, not allowing a lot of hits at all. His numbers are being skewed because of his opener, too, where he gave up 8 runs in 1 1/3 against Kansas City. And I think that's just opening day struggles, basically. Sometimes you can't take much away from that opening start, and pitcher is still reacclimating and whatever. And against Ober, the Padres only have 18 at-bats worth, and they're 167 off in batting average-wise and 444 OPS. So it's looking like, I think Minnesota's got to be the side here, right? Because they're in a bounce-back spot basically after losing yesterday. Bailey Ober has the starting pitching edge. He's got Minnesota didn't use as much of their bullpen yesterday. Martin Perez is on the other side for San Diego, and he is not one of their better pitchers. San Diego has a few pretty good starting pitchers, and he is not one of them. He's got a 4.62 ERA, 1.49 whip, putting almost 1.5 men on base an inning. But since he's been on San Diego, he's at a 1.96 ERA. Maybe it's just that the pitching part, it's just more of a pitching part because 2 of those 3 starts have been at home. One was against Pittsburgh, the team that just got rid of him. But it was against 3 bad offenses, and the road start was at Miami, and he faced Colorado and Pittsburgh at home. So he hasn't really faced anybody that impressive yet. So the Twins will actually be the best offense he's faced since joining San Diego. So I don't know if there's that much to take away from that. The fact that his stats just look ridiculous with San Diego, 21 to 3 strikeout walk ratio and 11 hits allowed in 18 1/3. But that's just not Perez. That's not sustainable for a guy like him who's not a strikeout guy. He's in his 30s. On the season, he's got an 84 to 35 strikeout walk ratio and 116 hits allowed and 101 1/3 innings pitched. That's more like what we get out of Perez for his career. He's kind of a junk pitcher, doesn't really do that well. Like he's basically just serviceable, I would say. I tend to want to go against him when it's him up against like a strong pitcher like Ober. So I'm looking, all right, I want to go against Perez here. But like I said, I do hesitate a little bit just because his numbers are good with San Diego. And pitching in this pitching park should help a little bit, but I still think you can't overcome the fact that he's just not that great a pitcher. But then looking at him against this Minnesota lineup, that's what keeps this from being a play for me, man. An 88 at-bats worth, Minnesota only hits 216 off him with a 630 OPS. So I just can't do it. And we got in the market, it does look like the market is in agreement with Minnesota, even though it's gone down from Minnesota minus 110 to minus 108. 54% of the tickets on Minnesota. Public kind of evenly split on this, thinking it's an even matchup. But Ober, I think, at least on the surface, looks like the much better pitcher. And I still think he is. It's just, this is kind of just matchup dependent. Perez just has good numbers against Minnesota specifically. And 94% of the cash on Minnesota as well. So more of the cash than the tickets, fairly significantly. So it does look like Minnesota does have some market signaling on them. But I just can't do it just because Perez has good numbers against Minnesota, and he's been good since joining San Diego, and San Diego's good overall. So it's not something I quite want to get involved in. I guess you could think about playing an under. It looks like there is a ticket cash split on that. 75% of the tickets on the over, 84% of the cash on the under. I don't know if I want to comment on really any of these other games. And you can ask questions in the comments if you want, and I will answer them. Maybe I should have, I do have like a Twitter group chat, which gets kind of feisty, kind of offensive because it's some guys who are kind of in line with Tower Gang and stuff like that. But maybe I should have like some sort of like chat or something like that, or start doing like live shows or something so I can actually interact more and respond to people so people can actually ask and discuss, because we're all trying to beat the market here, man. We're all trying to figure this out, trying to learn more strategies and stuff like that. But as far as today, man, I'm just passing on this card. I just don't like the card at all. College football is coming up. Week 0 is this week, which is crazy. I hate week 0 because it's like the opening college football week, but it's not a full week. And I believe is it only 2 games that are actually between FBS teams? I think maybe Florida State and Georgia Tech, and SMU and Nevada. Looks like those are the only 2 games in week 0. So week 0 is shorter card than last year. Last year, I think it was about 5 or 6 games or something like that. In the last couple of years, I think. This year looks like it's not as packed a card unless they're just not up on the board yet, which might be the case too. So I'll have to figure out, like, because I did weekly football videos for college and NFL last year. I'll probably do the same. And I had like the board up. I was screen sharing. I was actually using StreamYard for it and not using this more ghetto, just quick web software. So maybe I'll be doing that again. I was doing it like late Wednesday nights after Tower Gang. So really not sleeping at all Wednesday nights, having really late Wednesday nights. Maybe I'll change the scheduling on that. I don't know, but I like to get it out like a little bit earlier in the week so you can get better lines and whatever. So Wednesday is kind of that day of the week where it's like you hit it kind of just right. And it's like, oh, you still have like numbers that haven't completely moved yet, but you have enough information that you kind of know what you want to do. So we'll see what I want to do with that. If it's only 2 college football games, it could just be another one of these videos. Then I could just start the weekly videos with week 1. We'll see what happens. But football, I mean, there's a lot to have to look at with football. So tends to be a lot going on, and I can't, just go over every game and whatever. But we'll see what I want to do with that. But that is coming up. And I think that's going to do it, man. I had something else in my mind that I was going to say, but I can't even remember what it was. So I guess that will do it. Oh, college football, yeah, it's been my worst sport over the last 2 years, so I'll have to turn that around. It's my only sport over the last couple of years that's in the negative, and it's very slightly in the negative. I don't know what's been going on with that, but I want to turn that around. NFL has been better than college football for me over those years, but over the course of how long I've been doing this, like well over a decade, almost 2 decades, college football has not been as bad as it has been the last couple of years. It's been probably one of the more difficult sports for me to get a handle on, though, which is kind of weird because football is it's similar to playing the NFL in a way. It's just that it's a weekly sport. It's just, I don't know. It's just the way it's been. All right, man. Have a good one. Peace.